Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You have reached the National Association of Park Foundations and Davey Tree presentation on Arbor Day. We are very excited to have you today. We're looking forward to a great presentation from Davey Tree today about Arbor Day, how to celebrate it. And then I know that that Brian's going to be talking a little bit about some of the opportunities that Davey Tree has for the Park Foundation community as it relates to both Arbor Day and the work that they do. So it's going to be very exciting. We are recording this event today so that it will be available on the NAPF website for you to view later. So if you want to share it amongst your organization, you'll be able to do that as well. So you can show it to the rest of the folks there on your team. We will be getting started very shortly here. Just want to remind you that we have you coming in with the ability to use your camera and microphones. Love to see your pretty faces, but do mute your devices until which time we get to the Q&A section at the end. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have. With me today is the manager of membership, Casey Chenault, who's here today. And I want to give Casey just a brief minute, introduce himself and talk about the work that he does for NAPF.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to our content today. I know it'll be worthwhile. And certainly if any of you have questions, do not hesitate to chime in. There's a way for you to ask questions while we're going. So don't hesitate to do that. We've got a lot going on with the NAPF this year, so I'm excited to provide this webinar for not only for your use, but again, for anybody on your team. So thanks for joining us and enjoy.
Great. I just want to go ahead and before I introduce our speaker today, is talk about one more opportunity that NAPF members have access to, and that is the 2022 Park Foundation School. Park Foundation School is a very excellent opportunity for those people who are in the middle of their careers to get that advanced training in the management of park facilities, both from the budgetary as well as the facilities standpoint. It's a great opportunity. It's in partnership with Ogle Bay, which is a member of NAPF. Ogle Bay, if you're not familiar, is a 2,000-acre public park. I think it's our largest member foundation, featuring dining, cabins, and a hotel, as well as a zoo, a golf course, a spa, mini golf, several museums, and a lake that features pedal boating and kayaks. Also in partnership for Foundation School is North Carolina State University. So that's going on August 21 through 25. In Wheeling, West Virginia at the Ogle Bay facility. And the information can be found on the NAPF website under events. So we're super excited about that. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce today our speaker, Brian Berkowitz, who is the National Manager of Accounts and Partnerships for Davey Tree. Please take it away, Brian. And let me know let me know when you want me to change the screen for you.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Sorry, folks, I'm not going to be able to join a video. I had a little technical challenge here. So my pretty picture won't come up to the end of the presentation. So I apologize for that. But I look forward to meeting you in person at some point. If it permits, it'd be great. I think most of the work that we do with trees is best done in person, not via virtual. So most of the work that we do are hands-on. So apologize for that. Give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been with the Davey Tree Expert Company 31 years. Had a variety of different roles within the company. Started in the field, actually graduated from Southern Illinois University and have a forestry degree from there, and performed a lot of field work over the years, and then worked my way into sales and then management. Ran a district for 15 years for Davey. And then at this point, I'm in a business development role and the role that I perform is mainly in national accounts and partnerships. So obviously the NAPF is a strong partner for Davey. We do a lot of work in the parks world. And actually the other key partner in this presentation is the Arbor Day Foundation. So that's another key partner for Davey, and obviously for the tree world and how it can help. The Arbor Day Foundation can help, and Arbor Day can help move parks and trees through an area of prominence, and actually continue to promote tree and tree care in parks and have park service. So I'm going to go over just some history of Arbor Day. It's kind of a unique time for Arbor Day. This year is actually, they're celebrating 150 years of Arbor Day, which is quite a milestone. So I'll give you a little history. I'll give a little overview on how Davey can collaborate, or parks can collaborate with Davey, and with how we can celebrate the Arbor Day. I'll give you some tips on how parks can celebrate. Well, then we'll go on to some more technical information on the quantifiable benefits of trees and how they impact our day-to-day lives, and then obviously impact parks. Then I'll also go over kind of a benefit of what a canopy overview is, and how we can help manage trees on parks, and what that actually looks like for you all out there in the field. And then go over some Q&A, and hopefully have some time for that. So as I mentioned, Arbor Day is celebrating 150 years. Julia Sterling and Caroline Morton came from the Chicago area and homesteaded 160 acres out in Nebraska City, Nebraska, which it really didn't have a lot of trees, to be honest with you. And so Julius Sterling had a love for trees. He became the editor of the Nebraska City News, and back in 1872 proposed to have the very first Arbor Day. And that time, tree and tree care really wasn't known. It really wasn't something that people really thought a lot about. They thought trees they just kind of grow themselves and they maintain themselves. And Julius had a vision that trees actually should take a lot more prominence. So he, through the use of his newspaper's position, proposed the Arbor Day. And the very first year that he proposed that in Nebraska, they planted over 1 million trees. And the way that he did that, obviously through the newspaper, was to network with a lot of farmers, a lot of ranchers, a lot of homesteaders, a lot of people in the Nebraska City and Omaha area. And if you think about that, planting 1 million trees back in 1872, that was pretty substantial. So it was quite a feat that actually to take place. In 1882, he continued, so 10 years later, continued to collaborate with schools and got really integrated with the schools. And they began to really adopt Arbor Day as a kind of a school function, where they would go to the school children, teach them about trees and tree care and tree planting. And essentially the first Arbor Day was in 1885. Then moving ahead, in 1907, Theodore Roosevelt gets involved. I don't think this picture in the PowerPoint here is Theodore Roosevelt, but I believe it is somewhere in Washington where Arbor Day was celebrated. So in 1907, Theodore Roosevelt proclaims, makes a proclamation, not an official holiday, but proclamation that Arbor Day is a day of significance, and one that we should obviously be paying attention to. Moving on to 1970, actually President Nixon, believe it or not, proclaims Arbor Day as a national holiday, or day of celebration. I don't think we get any days off for it at this point. That'd be kind of nice. But typically, April, the whole month of April is kind of considered to be kind of environmental month, or Arbor Day month. And we celebrate a lot of tree and tree planting during April because it's probably one of the best times in the spring to do planting. So that's when there's a variety of different days within each city and state that celebrate Arbor Day. Traditionally, it's the last Friday in April, but with the advent of Earth Day happening in around the 1970s, that this week, actually the 18th to the 22nd, has traditionally now become kind of Earth Week, and the variety of states celebrate Arbor Day in a lot of different ways. And I guess that's kind of the key thing for Arbor Day, is it can be adaptable. You can move it based on the species of trees that you're trying to plant, the location, obviously, where you're going to be celebrating. I think there's some states that the Southeast, it's Arbor Day, the first week of April, and then a lot in the northern states go all the way till the end of the month. So it's nice to have that flexibility, but obviously the rich history of Arbor Day was celebrated and first started in the heartland there in Nebraska City, which is kind of a cool thing that's lasted the test of time. So next slide there, Kevin. So Arbor Day Foundation, which is still headquartered in Nebraska City, which is about an hour south of Omaha. Over the years, they have developed a lot of different types of programs that help parks. One of the main programs, and a lot of people have heard about it, is called the Tree City USA program. This was really one of the first programs that was started by the Arbor Day Foundation to really promote cities and municipal parks. Most of the time, parks are incorporated in with the cities to have programs and programming around tree planting, but also tree care. So this Tree City USA program exists today and is continuing to be promoted and continuing to be managed and expanded through growth, what's called now the Tree City USA growth programs. And that program is administered by Elena Tucker, who's a good advocate of that program in Nebraska City. And she works for the foundation. She helps administer that whole program for city parks and city municipalities throughout the US. And I believe they're also going to be promoting it to outside the US to help people plant trees and understand the significance of planting trees. One of the other key programs that Arbor Day focuses on is tree campus healthcare. So they are actually expanding their program, this tree campus idea, to really focus on schools from K through 12 to expose and reinvigorate that school connection with the Arbor Day program, as well as healthcare, as well as hospitals and other campuses to really promote this idea of tree planting and tree care. The other program that I'll mention that Arbor Day has a real strong presence in, and it's something that Park Foundation folks and parks people should consider attending, is their Partners in Community Forestry. It's an annual conference that they put on. Arbor Day is the main convener of that. But the idea around this community forestry conference is that collaboration between government, non-for-profit, for-profit, and other agencies to help promote tree and tree planting. They come together for a 2 to 3 day program or conference, and it rotates throughout the country. That Partners in Community Forestry is a very powerful tool in collaboration to help trees and help promote the idea of tree and tree care in the U.S. and then as well as outside the U.S. So this year it's going to be in Seattle, November 16th and 17th. And I would like to extend the invitation to folks to attend that. It's a really powerful conference. Next slide there, Kevin. So the next one is, how does Davey celebrate Arbor Day, and what's our involvement in Arbor Day activities? Davey has a long history, just like Arbor Day. We've been around since the late 1800s. Actually, 1880 was our incorporation. But we tend to, again, focus on people and focus a lot on acting locally. How can we get active folks involved in tree and tree care for the greater good of the globe? One of the key things that we try to do and mentor is various groups and mainly age groups. Typically schools and kids are a key thing that we focus on. So we tend to focus on the schools first. We have a large arborist network that in major metropolitan areas that incorporate school programming. So our arborists are encouraged locally to go to the schools and help put together tree planting and tree care programs during this Arbor Week and Arbor Day. The advantage of that is the folks that really get engaged with that, the teachers and the faculty do a nice job at helping to make that an emphasis on the youth. So we usually start with the youth. In the upper right-hand corner, that's actually an HOA, homeowners association, that Davey typically does a lot of work with, and other arborists do a lot of work with. But they in turn help us to create capacity and advocacy really for trees and tree care. The other group that Davey tends to get involved with is actually is campuses. One of the campuses that Davey has been involved with is, and they can actually consider it a park now, but Southern Illinois University is now considered an arboretum. And I want to touch on this concept of arboretum, because this arboretum can be a very powerful tool in advocacy. So I want to open that up to park foundations and park foundation groups and parks groups that actually through the ArbNet program at the Morton Arboretum, we can help, and Davey has done this, where we can help facilitate this idea of becoming an arboretum. So a city park can actually become an arboretum, and the main reason why they do this is mainly through advocacy and for marketing. They can then market their city park or their campus for as a certified arboretum. There's various levels of becoming an arboretum. There's 1 through 4. Some of the big arboretums like the Morton and the Holden arboretums and some of the ones out west, those are very high level arboretum, but parks can actually very easily qualify for a level 1 arboretum, which is pretty basic. Basically just need to have 1 or a few employees that are actually caring for or managing the program. They need to have 25 different species in the park, which actually is not that many. You would think that it seems like, 25 species seems like it's going to be a lot, but it's really not to meet the minimum standard. Then you need to have some type of celebration on Arbor Day to celebrate the park and the Arboretum itself. And then obviously have somebody just to help administer the program. It's a very simple application process through the ArbNet program, which is administered and housed at the Morton Arboretum. And Davey has really helped a lot of folks obtain that status. And then the parks can then use that for marketing and community building efforts around trees. So it's really a key program. It's something that Davey loves to get involved with. So next slide there, Kevin. This is just a quick snapshot of where Davey operates. And we are very open to helping folks become arboretum status, or more importantly, just do park our Arbor Day celebrations. Our arborists are really open to doing that. It's kind of a key value for us of giving back to the community. The more we feel like we're engaged with the community, the better everyone is. So just a quick snapshot of where Davey is. We're in the major metropolitan areas. And if for someone wants to get connected, I can help make that connection with folks in the field. Next slide, Kevin. So celebration tips. So these are some tips over the years that parks folks can take impart in and hopefully take back to local communities. As I mentioned, Earth Week is this week, 18th to the 22nd of April. So this tends to be the big week for tree planting and Arbor Day festivities. And so obviously this week's not going to be good to get something off the ground, but planning for next year, we're more than happy to help do that and get something going if you guys don't already. Or I know the foundation is always looking to take existing things and making them better. So we're more than happy to help facilitate an existing program and breathe new life into it, which could be great. As I mentioned, the geography makes a big difference. So folks in the Southeast or the South celebrating Arbor Day can be done a lot earlier in the month. Whereas I don't know where most of the folks are at today, but I'm in the Chicago area and we got a couple inches of snow last night. So a little bit late on that, but nonetheless, spring will eventually get here and it'll be time for tree planting. Couple cool ideas that I just had about trees and celebrating of those activities around Arbor Day is kind of a cool thing, is having a birthday party for Arbor Day. That's something that a lot of times folks don't think about, but it really can be powerful. And then actually collaborating with Earth Day activities and schools, it could really be powerful. The last thing I'll mention there is this new program is Tree Campus K through 12. We're actually Arbor Day is taking a lead on the campuses, whether it be elementary school all the way through high school, becoming a certified Arbor Day tree campus. As again a way to help rally folks around the Arbor Day idea. So next I'll move into kind of some interesting things, science, and which then translates into advocacy. But back in 2005, the Forest Service actually was getting a lot of requests for modeling on urban trees. And in the past, the Forest Service had always had a big role in modeling and monitoring and producing reports for large forests out in the rural areas. But it was becoming more and more evident that folks wanted to know more about, well, what about the benefits of urban trees? What does that actually look like? And how could it help us be advocates for trees? So in 2005, mainly driven by the Forest Service, That's where the majority of the scientists actually were housed. But they also know they needed help in collaboration. So along with Davey, we have an institute of science called the Davey Institute of Tree Science, the Arbor Day Foundation, the Society of Municipal Arborists, the International Society of Arborists, the Casey Trees Foundation, and the State University of New York College of Environment and Forestry basically came together on a collaborative tool called iTree. And the main emphasis was, how can we actually put tangible dollar benefits to the services that trees in the urban environment are actually producing? So that work started in 2005. The main output of that, you see that price tag on the tree to the left. Actually, it's at our corporate campus. But that was basically iTree in action, where we take a measurement of a local tree, the diameter and the species and the size, and we run it through peer-reviewed data through that group that I just mentioned. And they actually can calculate the annualized benefit that that tree is producing in that community. Since 2005, that program has been run through many trees, and actually used to help really create a lot of emphasis around urban tree benefits. Because in the past, we used to think, well, trees are good, they're fine, they're all nice, but what were they actually really producing in terms of benefits? And the benefits that are used to calculate those amounts is water sequestration from runoff, carbon sequestration, energy savings and benefit, real estate value, and a few others. And that's where they come up with these actual tangible benefits that you can communicate to the broader community, to say that this tree isn't just good, it's actually producing benefits that are tangible in our community. From that collaborative, we now have a lot of canopy assessment tools that help us produce land cover and planning analysis tools. And this is all focused around from the urban data. So in the past, we used to talk about forest modeling from the rural. Now we're bringing it to the urban communities. So next slide there, Kevin. So this was an interesting idea that we had, as Kevin and I were talking with our teams about how to put together this presentation. And Kevin said that, hey, I got a tree at Arbor Day when I was a youth, and I planted it in Simi, California. So we pulled through this iTree platform. We actually pulled this up on Google and ran Kevin's tree, which actually still exists today. And it's actually an ash tree that was planted in his parkway. And running through the iTree calculation, that tree that was planted as, I'm sure, just a little whip. Do you know what year that was, Kevin? That tree was planted?
Yeah, we figured out it was 1983.
So 83 to now 2022, that tree, running it through the iTree calculation, is now producing $25.15 of annualized benefit to the community where it stands right now.
And if I could, you were talking about the size of it.
Yep.
It actually came in a standard size, the smaller Dixie cup.
Wow.
So it was a sapling.
A Dixie cup, that wouldn't even be a sapling. That's a seedling. That was probably just out of the nut, basically. Wow, incredible. So it's nice to see that tree is there, still existing. Someone's been, obviously you don't live there anymore, do you, Kevin?
No, we moved away a long time ago.
So obviously someone's still continuing to care for that. And that's kind of one of the things that iTree wants to try to promote is besides the idea of tree planting, but the idea of care over a long period of time. Because obviously when that tree was planted from a Dixie cup, it's not going to be producing a lot of benefit. But here we are, years later, and it's actually somewhat substantial in terms of producing some benefit. The other thing through that calculation or that modeling that'll show is that if that tree continues to be cared for over a long period of time, in another 20 years, the cumulative benefits will be $564. So what that's actually trying to promote is not just the idea of tree planting, which is great, but also the idea of care and knowing that if we care for them over a longer period of time, this chamel ash will produce a lot more benefits for folks in the long run. Hence, really putting the idea of maintenance trying to become a lot more important. Which, and from my view, I hope that the Parks Foundation could be a key role at helping to promote. Tree planting, for some reason, seems to be a very easy way to talk about trees, and it's a very easy photo op where we can say, hey, look, here's the tree, here's the community, here are the people. We put the tree in the ground, that's great. But from my view, I think the Parks Foundation world and the parks world, if we really gravitated and really grasped this concept of tree maintenance and community tree maintenance, even though we don't own the tree, the whole benefit, whole community benefits. I think that there's a real opportunity there for us to promote this idea of community maintenance for everyone's benefit. There was a professor in University of Indiana, his name Bernie Fisher, actually, I think his last name is. He promotes this idea of trees as a common pool resource, that even though we don't own them, everyone gets the benefit from their benefits as long as they exist. So next slide, Kevin, we'll kind of get into the benefit of what a canopy overview might look like. And this idea of a legacy by planting and then more importantly, nurturing trees in your community. And again, I think the key word there is nurturing, where I think we've kind of not lost our way, but it hasn't been as much of a prominence in our community canopy. So from that, Kevin, we'll go to the next slide. So one of my ideas and our ideas as arborists has been around considering putting together a legacy tree management program. And what we mean by legacy management is this idea of caring for trees over a long time horizon. And I think that through the National Association of Park Foundations, obviously they have a lot longer view of things. And the Arbor Day Foundation, collaborating with local companies to help move trees from just these small trees into a more substantial community benefit, I think is something that we should start talking about. How do we collaborate to do that? The way I see this is kind of an ABC approach, where we, first of all, start taking the idea of assessment or analysis, probably a better word is analysis, of our community trees, really taking stock and what do we have there. That usually requires some data management, but a lot of communities start saying or start thinking, we got to do this big analysis of inventory of everything, and we got to know exactly where all the trees are and how big they are and what condition they are. And that doesn't have to be as daunting as what everybody thinks it needs to be. it could be very basic. And these tools that we have now can help us do that. But there does need to be some kind of data collection, have some kind of idea through analysis on what do we actually have. In our community, through the Yours First service and the Morton Arboretum, we have this group now called the Chicago Regional Trees Initiative. And this really is a repository for all of our data collection for regional trees in the Chicagoland area. So this could be something that we could duplicate in other areas of the country to try to have an idea of, where do we start and what do we have? So then we can move on to the next step of the analysis, which is understanding the needs. What do we really need to do in order to maintain this idea of canopy or more of a legacy tree management program? Once we understand the needs, we can establish the baseline and then move to more of what I consider backing. And what I'm talking about in terms of backing is trying to communicate what the long-term benefits are to the community. And this is not only a marketing, if you will, program, but it also could be a fundraising program where I think the foundations, the Parks Foundation should play a key role along with community partners at communicating these long-term benefits of why does it matter that we actually maintain these assets? Because once we lose these mature assets, particularly in an urban community, as we saw from that picture, that Kevin's tree was planted in '83, and it's a decent tree now, but that took a long time to get to be a 16-inch ash tree now. That's a long time horizon. So if we can start as a foundation group, communicate to the communities why that we need to invest in long-term care for the benefit of the community, I think that would be really, really powerful. Then obviously the last part of this legacy management would be the idea of care. How do we consider it to be important enough to put in a long care investment in these tree assets? When we were also talking, Kevin, over the last few months about where we see parks and whatnot, we started talking about cemeteries actually as parks, and don't quite yet know how that might fit into this foundation group, but trees actually cemeteries actually start having an endowment funds to maintain their infrastructure. So it could be conceivable that maybe parks start thinking about public parks are thinking about endowment funds or care funds for their trees for the long term. So just kind of want to plant that out there for folks that, through my experience, I see this as a big need. I think that the Parks Foundation groups could play a very key leadership role in helping to do this.
When you brought that up, Brian, in one of our previous conversations, I took that to heart and I started to do some research with regard to how many of the cemetery facilities are set up, and they are generally conservancies and foundations. So I haven't had any bites yet, but I've reached out to a number of cemetery facilities that have, for instance, they need to be open to the public, obviously, to qualify. Yes. But they may have either an amenity towards picnic space, or some of them have water features. Yep. So I've reached out to a number of them to find out if they'd be interested in getting involved with the work that we do, because a lot of the benefits that NAPF offers to park foundations would also transfer very well to these cemetery facilities. Yep, absolutely. And Mark Young points out that many park and recreation agencies actually manage cemeteries. I did not know that.
Yeah, sometimes I have heard of that, Mark, where a lot of times even private foundation or private cemeteries that are started and owned privately, through township rules and city rules, if they go into receivership, actually the city could actually, become an owner by mistake, or by default, of these cemeteries. And then obviously they're there to manage these cemeteries. And just a personal story, my grandmother, she was a big believer in cemeteries and parks. And a lot of times on Sundays as kids, that's where we would go. We'd go to the cemetery and have a nice meal if it was a nice day, and enjoy the green space. So yeah, it's a key thing. It's something you don't always think about, but again, when we start talking about collaboration, which I think in today's day and age is the rule of the day, the go it alone approach, I don't think helps anyone at this point. And I think it's many hands making light work, if you will. And we've got to try to figure out how to be collaborative to make the dollar stretch. And again, more importantly, maintain and plant new trees. Because as we said, I didn't really want to get deep into the climate change decision or issue. But, that is becoming a key part of cities being resilient, is to have large trees and trees in general for canopy cover and resiliency for weather patterns. So it will be important for, as we continue to build these, better communities, to have that from a climate change standpoint. And then obviously, as we know, that people are gravitated towards large canopies, and people want to live in those communities. So I think it's helpful for us to be more of a leader in that role. So I think that's
I just started getting involved a little bit with the Park Foundation here in McKinney, Texas, where I live. And I know that they have, with just from their own resources developed in partnership with the city of McKinney, have planted hundreds of trees. And what the goal was is, we have a lot of creeks that fill up here in the rainy season, which is just about, it could be 5 minutes from now, there could be a downpour. And what has happened is the trees that are closest to the creek bed are beginning to fall into the creek bed. And so they're a hazard for the flow of water. So what the McKinney Parks Foundation in consultation with the city has done is, as they go and start to pull some of those trees out of the creek bed, every single one of those, and then plus, are being replaced farther back from the creek bed, so that for many, many decades to come, we'll still have that canopy of cover, of shade. And obviously there's plenty of water in that area once those trees mature, to be able to continue to feed them the moisture that they need. So that was great.
Yeah. And in that example, when they planted those trees on the banks, it was, probably a good decision. But now, as development has grown, the increase of runoff is probably a lot more substantial. So hence the need to push those trees back, because you probably just get a lot more runoff than we've had in previous decades.
So we have our first question.
Yeah.
From Jill Young. Do you know of any resources that would help with designing attractive and unique native tree groves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it becomes pretty regional, Jill, wherever you're at, it tends to be, when you start talking about natives and things like that, you have to kind of find out where that's actually going to occur. But we can help make connections. I mean, Arbor Day, I'm sure, has connections, but usually land trusts are another key collaborator in having resources there. I'm not exactly sure where you're at, Jill, but I'm sure we can help, find a partner to help you design and put that in. Cities a lot of times do have good resources, for options, but I think it's just a matter of knowing where, and then we can kind of dive into what the best fit is.
I'll make sure that Brian's information is conveyed to all of the viewers today, so that you can reach out to him by email he'll also have a screen coming up here
Yeah.
in a minute. And of course, we could always rely on Mark to have some of the best questions.
Yeah.
Are there Arbor Day programs specifically designed to address invasive species such as the emerald ash borer and Asian longhorn beetle, which are plaguing many regions of the country? Yeah, I know it's a big problem in Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys got the bark beetle out there in Colorado. But yeah, you're right, Mark. The invasive species issue is becoming more and more prevalent. Seems like there's one that pops up every 2 or 3 years. Arbor Day has not gotten a lot into invasive species management. I'm sure they touch on it. Most of the invasive species management is led by APHIS, which is the Animal Health Inspection Service, part of the USDA. The USDA takes a lead on these invasive pests and plants that come into our US of A and become an issue. So they're the ones that typically take a lead on management of new invasives, and then from the APHIS, they typically work with the state regulators and put together programs. But what's interesting is, from my experience through, I managed the Asian longhorn beetle project here in Chicago in the early 2000s. And actually, we were successful at eradicating that alongside APHIS. But there's a lot of other state groups and community groups and cities that got involved to help manage that. And that seems to be the flavor of the day, is this collaboration idea that we have to collaborate in order to manage some of these things. The next one that's coming, besides emerald ash borer, is this spotted lanternfly, which has become another invasive pest. So there is an invasive pest network through APHIS, and Mark, I can probably, now that I'm thinking about it, I can probably come up with that of who that might be. And actually, the Morton Arboretum actually might be a good resource there as well. So, but I can connect you up with some folks.
And kind of on the same vein is, from invasive species, there's also, I think, a movement in many communities to reassess the types of trees that have been planted typically in those environments. And that science obviously is advanced to the point where many communities have begun to reassess whether the trees they have are the right trees for the environment and for the community. Has any of the work that Davey Tree has done, and with the various organizations you work with, in helping cities assess what the correct tree breeds are?
Yes. Yeah. We do varying degrees of what we call planting plans. They could be very local, or they could be kind of a master plan, where we actually help communities, again, through that assessment piece or analysis piece. We find out what is there. And then we can help make changes or recommendations based on that. I know through this regional trees initiative and here in the Illinois area, the largest tree, which is kind of sad to say, but the largest tree in Illinois is actually a European buckthorn, which is actually considered an invasive tree in Illinois. And so, there's ways, again, through this assessment, now that everyone knows that, we can put together management plans for eradication and management. I don't know if we'll ever get eradication of European buckthorn, but at least management of European buckthorn, and then give people recommendations of native plants that can help reduce and increase the palette of this European buckthorn. So yeah, there's ways to do it, but you kind of got to start with the science a little bit in order to know where you're going to go. It's kind of like a financial plan. If you don't really know where you're going towards, it's kind of hard to shoot for where you want to go.
We still have plenty of time for questions, folks. Feel free to drop those in the chat. I did have another question. So you all saw the tree that I planted as a young lad there in Southern California. And I remember going to a park to celebrate Arbor Day. and the city was there represented, the water district was there, and everybody handed out things. Obviously, the gift that kept on giving all of these decades was that small little sapling plant that was, and I remember there was various different trees that you could choose from. I was wondering if Davey Tree has any resources available to help communities that want to celebrate Arbor Day obtain things like young trees, because obviously you want to a lot of our foundations are would not have a lot of money to go out and purchase things like this. Are there any resources that can be offered, Brian, to help these park foundations and parks obtain some of these trees and other types of tchotchkes that help celebrate and promote Arbor Day?
Yeah, so what we typically do is when we have a community that wants to be engaged, we'll connect them with a local, and I put that Davey map up there with the local service group with Davey. And then we'll a lot of times work directly with the Arbor Day Foundation at putting together an Arbor Day program. And so the local arborists will collaborate with the local parks group or school group, and we'll connect with Arbor Day and put together little kits. And Davey actually has some of their own stuff that they do. And then they'll put together a little local celebration, for whatever the event is, depending how large it is. I mean, we can do smaller groups like on a one-to-one and, one-on-one basis. But if we start talking about a bigger one, then obviously we need to look at, other collaborative partners to help put together a bigger one. But what's interesting is once you get people excited about particular programs, the community that we're in, Geneva, Illinois, we started with, there was just actually a spin-off of a city program that was basically just a little commission. And through that little commission and commission group, they're actually not even part of the city. They're just separate, but they give advice to the city. We created this event called the Wine, Trees, and Trees event. And so what we do is we bring wine and cheese, and then we promote tree planting. Actually, this is actually happens in February, and we raise money through donations and folks getting together, and we have a nice little event, silent and live auction, and the community really gets together. I think you typically raise, I don't know, $10,000 or so a year to buy and purchase trees for the city that then they go get planted, and and they can't be in front of parkways. They have to be in front of industrial areas is kind of the goal. So we come and plant trees in front of the industrial area. But the thing has grown over the years. And so, it doesn't take much. It really just takes kind of folks to kind of get together for a shared cause, and then it kind of grows from there. So, but Davey's more than happy to help facilitate those conversations, what that actually looks like, and then get involved really small, and then hopefully the community kind of rallies around it.
We have time for another question if anyone wants to just pop in, either audio or in the chat. But
Kevin, I have a comment.
Yes.
It just seems to me, I know a lot of park agencies and foundations across the country have programs for tree donations or naming rights. Naming rights of a tree that's an older tree that's in a key location. The iTree program, it seems to me, would lend itself to help in those efforts. When you start to put a price tag on a tree and what its benefits are, what it gives back to us, I think that if you have a program, for tree naming rights, that helps lend value to the donation that someone might give. And if you don't have a program like that, this iTree concept kind of would help you to start that.
Absolutely.
And helps the donor to understand what that money is going for.
Right. And that software suite is free for everybody. I mean, it's free. It's used across the globe, actually. It's used across the US and overseas. And even in Saudi Arabia, it's used. So that's a free software that's out there in the public domain that everybody can use to advocate for exactly what you're talking about, Casey. That's a great point.
Well, I mean, we're coming close to the end of our time together. I really appreciate Brian taking the opportunity to promote Arbor Day, help you as foundations, park foundations, also promote trees in your parks, as well as the organizations that Brian has informed us about today that can be a part of the tree and arbor experience in your parks. Brian's contact information is up on the screen right now. I'd encourage you to write that down. I'll also try to get an email out today that will include his contact information. Also want to remind you that, as always, we do send out a webinar survey following this today. I will also include in my survey email a link to where you can obtain a copy of this video and rights to be able to view it again. And as members, you have the ability to share this with all of the people that are on your team. I'll remind you that if you have members of your organization that are not registered on the website, that's the best way to ensure that everyone has both access to the benefits of the website, but also that they're receiving emails about events like this so that they can choose to attend them or not, is to register them on the website. If you have any issues doing that, you can send an email to membership@the-napf.org, and Casey will work with you to get all of your folks. And I don't care if it's 5 or 50, when you pay your membership, it includes everybody in your organization. So I'd encourage you to sign them up. But we'll also have this video available up there in the webinar section of the website, and I'll send a link around to everybody else. Brian, do you have any closing words for us?
You mentioned the Ogle Bay Park at the beginning, and what's interesting is we've already engaged with them actually for some tree care and arboretum status ideas with Ogle Bay. We did a visit out there a couple weeks ago, and actually pre-COVID they engaged with us, and we kind of put it on the back burner. But that's another key property that, again, hopefully everyone can consider going to that. The previous director, Don Ortel, wanted me to go to that school and attend and listen and whatnot. So hopefully I'll get a chance to do something there and work on that property as a representative for Dave, because there's a lot of key things there. And I think there's a lot of potential for Arbor Day and promoting the idea of foundation giving at Ogle Bay, and that school just sounds incredible. Sounds really awesome.
I will be at foundation school, so if you're looking for an opportunity to meet me, probably not, but one can dream. I will be at Park Foundation School to kind of sit in and learn. Like you guys, I want to learn more about the Park Foundation space. As a park commissioner, I had one experience. As the executive director of NAPF, I have a different experience. I also want to learn from an education standpoint about the more minutia of running park facilities. So we have come to the top of the hour. I want to thank Brian again and my membership manager, Casey, for assisting today with this webinar. Next webinar is on May 26th, and that is the U.S. Tennis Association's Tennis Assessment Webinar. So this is going to be another opportunity for a partner with NAPF to provide analysis and information, this time on tennis facilities in your parks. So that's going to be at 1:00 Central on May 26th. There'll be an email going around soon. I want to thank you folks again for showing up today. This will be the end of this webinar, but I appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin.